Think about the iconic legends who, never got the chance to grow old. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Tupac Shakur.
Yeah, these absolute titans of music.
And they leave behind these monumental, world-shifting legacies. But they also leave us with this lingering, incredibly uncomfortable question.
Why does the music world seem to have so many stories of brilliantly talented people dying prematurely?
Right? Like, are we just paying more attention because they're famous, or is there an actual measurable danger inherent in making music for a living?
It is a question that just completely haunts our cultural consciousness. We look at these vibrant people and it feels like there must be some, I don't know, some dark gravitational pull attached to the art form itself.
So for this deep dive, we are synthesizing a massive stack of sources. We've got academic research, medical journals, industry manuals, sociological studies, all to find out what is actually going on behind the stage.
And to do that properly, we really have to start by putting the biggest, most pervasive myth under the microscope.
The infamous 27 Club.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea that age 27 is somehow a cursed year for musical geniuses. I mean, it's folklore at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
But if we want to understand the reality of early mortality in music, we can't rely on folklore, right? So when researchers actually crunched the birth and death dates of these artists, what do they find? Does the math actually support the myth?
Well, the short answer is no. The math completely upends the narrative.
Wait, really? Completely?
Yeah, we looked at a British medical journal study, right? And they analyzed over 1,000 UK chart-topping artists. And we put that alongside an even larger study by researchers Kenny and Asher that tracked over 13,000 pop musicians.
That is a lot of data.
Right. It's a massive sample size.
Yeah.
And the data reveals that age 27 is, well, it's not statistically unusual for musicians to pass away. The BMJ study found that death rates at age 25 were essentially identical to age 27.
Okay, wow.
And Kenny and Asher actually found a massive, significant spike at age 32.
Age 32?
Yeah, that's the age that claimed Karen Carpenter, Keith Moon of The Who, and John Bonham of Led Zeppelin.
Oh, I didn't realize they were all 32.
Right, so if you just follow the numbers, I mean, you could invent a 32 club or a 25 club just as easily.
Okay, I hear the data, but my brain is like actively rejecting it.
Which is totally normal.
Because if you walk up to anyone on the street and say the number 27, they immediately think of Cobain or Winehouse. If it's a statistical illusion, how did it manage to brainwash our entire culture?
Well, the sociological mechanisms behind this are actually fascinating. There's an article from ZME Science that explains this using two concepts. One is called stigmergy, and the other is mimetic reification.
Okay, big words. Let's start with stigmergy.
So stigmergy is actually a biological concept. It describes how traces left in an environment influence future actions.
Oh, like ants. Think of stigmergy like ants leaving a pheromone trail, right?
Yes, perfect analogy.
One ant finds food, leaves a scent. The next ant follows it, reinforces the scent, and soon the whole colony is marching in a line.
Exactly. And in our digital age, search engines and social media algorithms are those pheromones.
Oh, man. So one 27-year-old artist dies. An algorithm pushes a 27 Club Wikipedia page.
Millions of people click it.
Right. And the trail gets wider and stronger until it looks like a paved highway, even though it started by pure chance.
That is the exact mechanism, and that leads directly into mimetic reification.
Which means what exactly?
It's this sociological phenomenon where if people define a situation as real, it becomes real in its consequences.
Oh, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Basically, yeah. Because society has imbued the age of 27 with this mystical significance, the legacies of those who die at that age are artificially amplified by the media.
Right. We just hear about them more.
Exactly. We encounter their stories vastly more often than the musicians who died at 26 or 28. It creates the illusion that the age itself is deadlier.
So the myth became real simply because we went looking for it.
Pretty much.
But as we went through these medical journals, we found a much heavier truth waiting underneath that myth. Because while 27 isn't a cursed age, early death in music is an undeniable statistical reality.
Yeah, the data paints a very, very grim picture. Musicians in their 20s and 30s have a mortality risk 2 to 3 times higher than the general population.
2 to 3 times? That is staggering.
It is. Across their lifetimes, popular musicians can have lifespans up to 25 years shorter than comparable populations.
Wow.
So, the 27 Club is a fiction, sure. But this severe elevated risk of early death is an empirical, terrifying fact.
Okay, so if age isn't the trigger, we have to isolate the actual catalyst. Is it the fundamental act of making music, or is it the sudden onset of fame?
That's the crucial question.
Because sudden fame sounds like being strapped to a rocket. You get these incredible stratospheric heights, but you experience what the sources call sudden wealth syndrome.
Right. And intense paranoia.
Right. And just a total overnight loss of anonymity. You can't even go to the grocery store anymore.
Well, a researcher named Mark Bellis actually studied this specific fame onset period. He found that from 3 to 25 years post-fame, artists experience more than 1.7 times the mortality rate of matched general populations.
So the danger isn't the music.
No, not at all. The danger is the environment that extreme fame thrusts a human being into.
Yeah.
And there's a really crucial distinction in Bellis's data regarding how you enter that environment.
What do you mean?
Solo artists have twice the mortality rate of band members.
Twice the rate.
Yeah, double.
When you think about the power dynamics, that actually makes complete sense.
How so?
Well, a band is a closed ecosystem, right? It provides built-in peer monitoring. If you're spiraling, your bandmates are right there on the bus with you,
Yeah.
and they have the social standing to intervene.
That's true. They're peers.
But a solo artist is effectively a corporation. Everyone around them is on payroll. Managers, stylists, assistants, their livelihoods depend on the artist keeping the machine running.
So nobody wants to be the one to stop the tour.
Exactly. That power dynamic isolates the solo artist, making interventions nearly impossible.
That makes a lot of sense. And Bellis's study also revealed a stark geographic divergence that highlights the systemic issues at play.
Oh, right. Europe versus North America.
Yeah, after 25 years of fame, European pop stars actually see their mortality rates return to normal population levels.
But North American stars don't.
No, they do not. Their mortality rates stay highly elevated, largely linked to chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease.
Which points directly to systemic healthcare differences.
Mhm.
I mean, in Europe, if you fall out of fame, age, or get sick, there is a socialized safety net.
Right, you still get healthcare.
But in the American market, the pressure to produce is just relentless. And if you lose your relevance, you often lose your health insurance. The safety net is incredibly thin.
So fame creates this intense psychological pressure cooker. But we really have to look at the physical environment where that pressure actually plays out, night after night.
The tour.
Exactly.
Because when you buy a console ticket, you are expecting this magical, high-energy experience. But what you don't see is that the person giving you that energy has likely been living in a metal tube on a highway for 3 months.
It's grueling.
We need to talk about the touring machine. Reading Tamsin Embleton's manual, Touring and Mental Health, the biological reality of this job is devastating.
Yeah, the physical toll goes far beyond just being tired. You are looking at the systematic destruction of the circadian rhythm.
Right, it's just a travel.
Touring involves severe lack of sunlight, moving across time zones constantly, irregular nutrition, and chronic sleep disruption. It is a state of perpetual physical vulnerability.
Biologically, the human nervous system is just not equipped to handle the modern touring schedule.
Not even close.
I mean, your body doesn't know the difference between the adrenaline of 50,000 screaming fans and the stress of running from a literal predator.
That's a great way to put it.
Embleton explains that the body enters what she calls survival mode. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is triggered, and it just floods the system with daily bursts of cortisol and cortisone.
And because the schedule never stops, the artist never gets the chance to adequately discharge that stress,
So they just stay in that state.
basically. The nervous system becomes completely dysregulated. It violently oscillates between hyperarousal, which manifests as extreme agitation, hypervigilance, and an inability to wind down.
And hypoarousal, right?
Right.
Which looks like numbness, profound exhaustion, and despair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which perfectly explains the phenomenon of the post-tour blues.
Right. You transition from this high-octane madness where every single minute of your day is scheduled by a tour manager to coming home to absolute silence.
And massive crash.
One of the artists in the sources described the crash as waking up and finding, well, nothing. No crew, no crowd, no adrenaline, just you alone in a room, completely biochemically depleted.
Yet, the compulsion to perform, to stay on that stage despite the physical collapse, is incredibly deep-seated in many of these artists.
It really is. There is a story in Embleton's book about the jazz drummer Steve Reed that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh yeah, the London Jazz Cafe show.
Right. He played this final live show at London's Jazz Cafe. The promoter noted that he played with this unbelievable, transcendent energy, like the music was just pouring out of him.
But he was incredibly sick.
He was visibly suffering from prominent tumors across his face and neck. He died just a few months later. It showcases this almost superhuman drive to perform, even at the absolute end of life.
So when human beings are trapped in that chaotic, high cortisol touring cycle, feeling that immense pressure to perform while physically breaking down, they inevitably seek an off switch.
Naturally, because you can't live in that state of constant hyperarousal forever. The human body physically cannot sustain that much cortisol.
They just collapse.
Exactly. The artist desperately looks for a way to power down. And historically, the music industry is all too happy to hand them a bottle or a pill to flip that switch.
Yep, the quick fix.
But I want to get beyond the lazy sex, drugs, and rock and roll stereotype here, because is the industry corrupting otherwise healthy people, or is there a specific psychology drawn to this career in the first place?
Well, the Bellis study examines this through the lens of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And the findings are just staggering.
Okay, for context for you listening, ACEs refer to things like childhood abuse, neglect, or severe household dysfunction.
Right. And Bellis found that half of the musicians who died from substance abuse or risk-taking behaviors had recorded adverse childhood experiences.
Half. That's a huge proportion.
The correlation is undeniable.
Yeah.
Artists with 3 or more ATEs died 20 years younger on average than those without them.
20 years younger just from having childhood trauma.
Yes. So the industry doesn't necessarily generate the initial trauma. It attracts individuals who may have turned to performance and music as a survival mechanism, right? As a way to seek validation or control.
Right. The stage feels safe.
Exactly. But then the industry places those highly vulnerable people into an environment of extreme stress, surrounds them with wealth, and provides unrestricted access to illicit substances.
It is throwing gasoline on a psychological fire.
That's exactly what it is.
The sources discuss this concept of the abuse continuum because the music industry is utterly unique in its structural normalization of addiction.
Oh, total.
I mean, think about it. If a banker, a teacher, or an airline pilot showed up to work visibly intoxicated, there would be an immediate intervention. They would lose their job.
Immediately.
But in the music industry, substance abuse is often viewed as part of the creative process, or just a necessary, accepted tool to keep the tour moving. The workplace itself normalizes the very thing that is killing its workers.
And it's interesting because the way that mortality manifests actually shifts depending on the specific subculture of the artist.
Oh, the genre differences.
Yeah, the Kenny and Asher data highlighted clear genre differences.
Yeah.
Excess suicides and liver-related diseases see massive spikes in country, metal, and rock music.
And on the flip side,
conversely, homicides are disproportionately high in hip-hop and rap. So the specific avenues of risk are dictated by the cultural norms of the genre, but they all stem from the exact same underlying vulnerabilities.
this just shows that the addiction or the risk-taking behavior isn't the actual disease, it's just a symptom.
Right.
The underlying engine driving this early mortality crisis is a severe systemic mental health epidemic. Let's look at the numbers, because the research from Frontiers in Public Health and the University of West London is terrifying.
The suicidality rates.
Yes, suicidality among touring professionals is over 5 times higher than the general U.S. population.
5 times.
Nearly 40% of touring pros report high suicidality. 4 out of 10 people making live music happen are struggling with the desire to end their lives.
And this pressure cooker is a global phenomenon. In some markets, the mechanisms of control make it even more lethal.
Yeah, the deep dive into the Korean pop or K-pop industry was just harrowing. We've seen a tragic string of highly publicized suicides in recent years. Guhara, Sully, Moonbin.
It's just heartbreaking.
The sources detail the architecture of this specific crisis. It's built on a trainee system where kids enter at 12 or 13, accruing massive debt to the management agencies.
They're essentially trapped.
Yeah. They face impossibly artificial beauty standards, extreme isolation, and are contractually forced into intense parasocial relationships with fans. I mean, they can't even date in their personal lives without facing boycotts.
Clinical researchers looking at this global landscape have actually identified a core mechanism at play across all these tragedies. They call it the vulnerability triad.
Okay, let's break down how that triad actually operates in a musician's life.
Sure. So it consists of 3 things: emotional dysregulation, chronic distress, and substance-mediated coping.
All right, so starting with emotional dysregulation.
Right. That often stems from those adverse childhood experiences we discussed.
Yeah.
It's an innate difficulty in managing intense emotional states.
Okay, and then you add the second part, chronic distress.
Yes. That's the grueling touring schedule, the loss of privacy, the relentless industry pressure we were talking about.
And finally, you introduce substance-mediated coping.
Exactly. Because the artist lacks healthy emotional regulation skills, and because the schedule doesn't allow for therapy or rest, they use drugs or alcohol to numb the distress.
So when those three elements converge in an environment that actively encourages substance use, it becomes a lethal trap.
It really does.
What makes this so insidious is how we, as the audience, respond to it. We actively romanticize it.
The tortured genius myth.
Yes. We have built this pervasive, tortured genius myth. We've engineered a culture that incorrectly believes madness, deep suffering, and trauma are the essential ingredients for creative brilliance.
We tell artists that their pain is what makes them great.
Exactly. And that narrative actively discourages them from seeking help because they fear losing their creative edge. I mean, we're literally consuming their pain as entertainment.
That raises a profound question about the musicians who manage to survive the peak of their fame. Because the ones who don't die young still have to navigate the systemic failures of this industry.
Ones you just burn out.
Yeah, and that leaves a wake of physical and emotional burnout extending decades past their youth.
Let's talk about those artists who simply break down. The physical reality of the job is brutal. The sources detail the chronic physical injuries just from carrying heavy gear, for one.
Oh, and the stages.
Right. They navigate different stage rakes, the slope stages they perform on, which permanently damage their knees and hips night after night. They suffer profound hearing loss, chronic pain, and severe career burnout.
And the structural issues in the industry compound this suffering through a medical phenomenon called diagnostic overshadowing.
Diagnostic overshadowing, meaning the medical community misses the forest for the trees, essentially.
Exactly that. A clinician sees a musician presenting with a severe substance abuse problem and treats only the addiction.
They ignore the root cause.
Right. They completely miss or ignore the underlying trauma, the lack of sleep, or the occupational burnout that necessitated the substance abuse in the first place.
That is so frustrating.
It is. The industry functions very much like what sociologists call total institutions.
Like a prison or a military barracks.
Yes, environments where the output, the product, is prioritized entirely over human well-being and autonomy.
There is a powerful quote from music journalist Ian Winwood in our sources that synthesizes this entire dynamic. He wrote, "Because musicians can be vulnerable individuals, in time the industry itself becomes vulnerable."
That's a great way of putting it.
Right. The environment is shaped by the traumatized people who are drawn to it. It creates this toxic, institutionalized loop that just churns up the next generation of artists.
The industry doesn't just attract vulnerability, it monetizes it.
Wow, yeah.
But the sources we review don't just point out the problems. They suggest highly actionable frameworks for change.
We don't have to just accept this as normal.
No, the tragedies could be massively reduced if the industry implemented systems like the Zero Suicide Framework.
Which shifts the paradigm entirely, right? It treats suicide prevention as a core systemic responsibility of the management and the record label, rather than just an individual's personal failure.
Yes. And the sources also advocate for structural changes on the road, like providing mobile dual diagnosis support on tours.
So having mental health and addiction professionals actually embedded on the tour bus.
Exactly, treating the issues where they happen. There is also commamching, counseling on access to lethal means.
How does that work in a tour setting?
This involves professionals helping artists and their touring families identify crisis windows and physically restrict access to excess drugs or weapons during those high-risk periods.
That seems so practical and necessary.
It is. Fundamentally, we need to put mental health safeguards, mandatory rest periods, and therapeutic support directly into those restrictive 360-degree recording contracts.
It fundamentally requires the industry to treat these artists like human beings first and products second.
Absolutely.
So wrapping all this up, the 27 Club is a trick of cultural memory, but the early mortality of musicians is a heavily documented reality driven by the isolation of extreme fame, the unnatural physical demands of touring, an industry culture that structurally normalizes addiction, and deep unaddressed trauma.
It's a systemic failure, not a magical curse.
Exactly. So next time you stream your favorite song and you marvel at the raw, unfiltered pain in the artist's voice, ask yourself, Are the very things we idolize about our favorite musicians exactly the things the industry is exploiting to destroy them?